Okay, Jeff, pleasure having you here. Um, I watched a lot of your videos, a lot of your podcast. I believe that you really truly understand like the economic system because you know economics and technology. A lot of people just know, one side or the other, but you know both of them very well. So I want to hear more about you. I've also purchased your book. I think everyone should read this book. Very entertaining, very educational, and I do highly recommend it. All right, Jeff, without further ado, let's get started. Please introduce yourself, how you became a tech entrepreneur, and what is your mission in life?
Just that. Um, I think I'm an entrepreneur, primarily entrepreneur. How I became a technology entrepreneur is I saw technology evolving at a rapid scale, and that you could do more with less, right? That you could change things and give more value. And so I got very interested in how technology was changing the world, because you could use it to create more value for people. And you have to understand anything an entrepreneur ever creates wasn't there before, and they're competing with everything that was there before. So they're trying to create more value. So the output of entrepreneurs' work is better value for people. And if it doesn't work, the entrepreneur goes broke. So why I got interested in technology is you could see how fast technology was moving and how fast, and I'm talking back early in the internet days, what would happen because of the internet, and what the opportunities to create value for people on top of the internet would be. So I was involved early in the internet. That led me to building some very sizable companies inside kind of through kind of the dot-com days and the early internet days, and investing in a bunch of those companies that kind of household names today. And then that led me down to the path where I wrote the book. I realized that why, if everything is driven by this force, this free market force, and technology moving at this rate, why aren't prices falling at that rate? That led me to understand at a first principles level why that wasn't happening. That it was a construct of our existing financial system. So that led me to economics, to write the book, because I realized the world would divide and essentially go to war if you didn't have a transition to a new system. And I lay out that thesis in the book, which, if you kind of fast forward to where we are now, from when I wrote it, it's like a prediction machine of what would happen, and it's all happening. So that led me to how to solve that paradox.
Okay. Can you explain why prices fall to the marginal cost of production in a free market, and why that cannot coexist over time with a debt-based monetary system?
Yeah, so the natural state of a free market is deflation. And you know how you just nodded your head? Everybody nods their head when I say that, because the free market. So what does the free market do? What do? We trade with each other to get more value all over the world. That's what we do. We trade with each other to get more value. And I can prove that, because if this video conference that we were doing right now cost you $100 per video conference, you would use something different. You would use something that gave you more value. That's why this is free. So we use things that give us more value. You use Google. If Google charged you $5 a click, you would use something else. So constantly we're in search for more value in our own terms with what value means to us. And entrepreneurs go in and try to solve that problem. And like I said, otherwise they go broke. Because the competition to solve that problem is immense from entrepreneurs all over the world, prices fall to the marginal cost of production. So the marginal cost of production of a line of code, aka your calculator app on your phone, is zero, because entrepreneurs race in and they create new calculator apps, and then the next one races in and they try to create a better one for lower price, and then the next one creates a lower price until it costs zero. And then there's no economic reason for an entrepreneur to create the 53rd calculator app, because it's already free. they go on and they create something else. So so you can see prices fall to the marginal cost of production in a free market, and the marginal cost of production of everything is moving to free, with artificial intelligence moving faster and faster, and then that combining with robotics moving faster and faster. And so that is a world we should live in. But it provides a conundrum for the existing financial system that we measure from. And so in that world, and you have to really compartmentalize this, and it's hard to do. In that world that we've just already identified, every single person on the planet gets richer every year, even if they don't do anything, even if they don't work. They get richer because it's a natural rate of deflation. The prices of other people doing work to try to solve problems fall for you. So if you did nothing in that world, every year you'd get richer. Call it by 5% this year, which would exponentially get better and better. Prices would fall at that rate if you lived if you could measure that system. But if you let deflation work from a credit-based system, the credit can't be repaid. So the credit collapses, or the debt gets more expensive relative to the deflation, right? So, and here's a way to visualize that for people that don't know what that means. In real terms, the debt it can't be paid back. So in real terms, if you have no revenue from a calculator app, what do you pay that debt back with? So it explodes in real terms. So that system that we measure from is a credit-based system that then therefore must grow its credit and debase its credit, destroy its currency to survive. So it must steal more and more of your energy to survive. And most of the people around the world are measuring their lives through that credit-based system that must steal their time and energy and divide them to be able to create more currency units. So they're working harder and harder and harder inside a system that's stealing all of their energy. That's the unfortunate paradox of the worlds the transition we're going through.
Okay. I don't remember exactly where you mentioned this in your book, but you said that debt was a good deal in the past, but not anymore. Can you explain this further?
Yeah, it looks like you're growing, right? Or it's productive debt. If you could add productive debt and you could grow against that, then your growth rate, and you could pay back the debt. But once you get into a cycle like this, where either the debt gets too big or productivity is going so fast because of technology that productivity growth is faster deflation, which means the debt collapses. The debt can't be paid back. And so when I wrote in my book, I said we had $250 trillion of total debt in 2019 globally when I wrote my book. I realized that if I was right on my thesis, that there should be a smoking gun to an increase of the amount of global debt from the other side of the ledger, from what ledger we were measuring everything from. And that should have come over the last 20 years as technology moved faster. And so that's what I found. I found out of the $250 trillion of total debt, total global debt, 185 trillion came in the preceding 20 years. All of human history to 185 trillion of 250 trillion in the preceding 20 years, or all of since monetary value was reset around the world. But a long time, growing slowly, then parabolic rise, exponential rise. And furthermore, I predicted that if that was right, then it had to keep going exponentially. The debt had to go exponentially. So today, 4 years later, after writing my book, what is the debt? It's about 400 trillion of total global debt. And so you can see an exponential rise of that debt. And what I would recommend people to do, instead of saying currency, think pieces of paper that I measure the world by. Right. And then that breaks the frame of mind. And if you could create more pieces of paper to measure everything, then obviously everything's relative to those pieces of paper would go up in price. But that's not the real world. It's just relative to those pieces of paper. And then who gets to decide to print more pieces of paper? And what is the cost to you? So I would really recommend people, because it's really simple when you actually describe it in, you just have such a unit bias to you believe your currency has value that you're not saying how much is stolen from you by just creating more pieces of paper. So, and then you think economics is hard because you think only people who can understand all of this it's too hard for me. It's really easy. Economics is really simple. We try to trade with each other all over the world to get more value, and prices fall to the marginal cost of production. That's it. That means the derivative of those two statements means all prices should fall forever in a free market. And it also means if they're not, you don't live in a free market. You live in a control system that is stealing your time and energy. It's that simple.
Yeah. When you start out with the lie, you got to make more lies, and then becomes more convoluted, right?
And then you have a whole bunch of PhD economists using math formulas so that you don't feel smart enough to ask that question, when it's a really simple question. It's really simple. And so all of the textbooks, all of the economics that are built on top of that lie. And when people say deflation is bad, they don't actually tell what they mean by that. What they mean is deflation is bad for a credit-based system. But they don't mean deflate. Why is deflation? Why are goods and services getting cheaper for you bad? And nobody investigates that deeper because they've trusted a whole bunch of other people to not completely tell the truth. And many of those people who actually believe that because they grew up in that system without ever asking a first principle question for the root of that. So if you take economics in school, nobody ever asks the deeper, where does the money come from in the first place? They start on top of, here's a debt-based system and here's what's required. And all of the research is above that stack instead of where does the wealth come from in the first place?
Exactly. Like, why do we even use the dollar, right? Like, who made this?
Like, why does it? Like, I know all of this. I know why, because it's a control system, and you can gain. And if you could steal a little bit of the productivity that should flow to the world, a little bit at a time, it means you accrete all of the wealth of the world by that slow theft, and then that theft has to go higher and higher and higher, and that's why we go to war to try to reset it. And then typically at the end of that war, somebody says, I promise not to do it again, and then does it again, because you literally get to suck all of the productivity that should flow to the world to you.
Okay. So would you say that fake money led to mostly all the problems we have in today's society, because at the base level there's manipulation?
Yes. The all money is information. You don't want more money. What you want is what you think more money buys you in your terms. That could be a new car, that could be a house for your family, but and the house for your family is so you can enjoy your family. Right? It could be it could be legacy. So people remember me after I'm gone, that I did great for my family. But all of those descriptions that you're making through money are really, it's just information that is telling you the thing that you really want. So it's a ledger that describes this trade. So if you have misinformation in money or a broken ledger, and all of our actions are on top of that, then our actions are emergent from that ledger. So if you had theft in a ledger, and you thought the only way to win is to gain more of this information, and that made everybody worse and worse and worse, you would just describe the world through that broken ledger. It would be a mirror reflection of all of the actions of mankind around the world would be sitting on top of that misinformation, and people would be really confused because they don't go down to the sand here. They don't go down as deep. They make decisions on top of it, and they don't know that they make decisions on top of it. But if you don't have, if you're going around the monopoly board and all the assets keep going higher, and somebody says, instead of giving you $200 because you can't get around the board, then they say they'll give you 400, and then all the house prices just went up higher, and then they give you 600, and all that price has. They're essentially stealing all of your energy to make the centralization worse, but you won't know it because you're inside that game. You're playing the game, and so you will vote for more people to do more of that, thinking that they're helping you while they're robbing you. And I say, and I want to be careful about the robbing or theft. Most of the people within the system, even politicians, have no idea this is going on. They just don't know how to solve it from the system. There is no way to solve it from the system they're measuring from. So it gets worse and worse and worse. And no matter who you vote for on either side of the ledger, or who in the world you're voting for, you're voting from inside that game and more manipulation. So you're really voting for, because it's not a free market. All of this is stolen money that comes from you, because the free market is deflationary. You're actually asking who should get more of the gains, this group of people or this group of people, from the stolen money that comes from you. And most of the people within that system have no idea they're doing it either. So wealth theft is a harsh word, or stolen is a harsh word. And I use it sometimes. I don't mean to say it in the way that many of the people that are doing it even know they're doing it.
Yep. I always wanted to ask you this. So in the current system that we have, you could say that the elites have two options, right? They either continue printing, as much as they can, or they let the deflationary bust happen, right? So I would say that, are they not wanting to do a deflationary bust because they care about our well-being, or they just don't want to lose control?
So there isn't a person alive that would vote for that deflationary bust. You wouldn't vote for it. So think about what it would look like. So regardless if they think about you, and just think about you right now. Let's say in this current ledger of broken money, you own a certain amount, and let's say you own a house and you own a mortgage on the house, and you have some money in the bank, and you're saving that money and you let a deflationary spiral happen from that system. Your house is worthless. There would be no food in your grocery store because it would go broke. There would all the banks would close because there would be no money in the bank. The credit is the money, and as the deflation kept coming, the credit is completely destroyed, and that means the bank's completely destroyed, and that means the government that you think is sitting there protecting, or the roads and everything built on top of that, so it all collapses. I mean, to zero. And it looks like a chaotic event. So no matter where you are, when I say chaos, you couldn't even describe the chaos. And what ends up happening in those types of events around the world, when they happen to other countries, a dictator moves in and takes all away your rights and freedoms because you'll trust them to take care of you, and they end up controlling you. So inside that, from that system, there is no way to solve that problem from that system. And I would say very, very few people even know what I just said, right? Including many people when I talk about Bitcoin, many people. And so why I talk about Bitcoin like I do is it's a transition to a new system that can emerge and move the energy slowly to a new system that heals the world, that is in alliance with freedom, prosperity, abundance, and you can't get there from the existing system. And so it's really important. There is no resolve from the existing system. It has to trap you in it. It has to steal more of your energy. And most people will give it more energy thinking there's a villain within the existing system or a hero within it. And they'll make it work. They'll make it stronger over themselves because they think it's somebody's fault. It's just incentives.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you like a psychological question. So how did you deal with the truth that the system cannot be saved and there's rampant theft through inflation? Did you go through the stages of grief such as anger, sadness, and then eventually acceptance?
No, not honestly. I didn't. Some people do. Some people are so mad at what's happening that they exhibit that mad and they're yelling at it all day long. Then they don't know that they're making it stronger. So I use the example many times that you go in a march, you walk down the street, you turn over cars, you burn buildings, you break windows, you go home. And the next day or the next week, all of that's cleaned up and everything's fixed. Where did the money come from to fix it? And it came from you. Yeah, it came from you. You're making all of that anger, all of that stuff is making that system stronger. So I just know, I know myself, and I know, and I think in first principles. So as I started to understand this, and it wasn't people, it was a system. And when you say it wasn't people, there is no they, it's only us. Our choices matter. And most of your choices are within the existing system, making it stronger. You have nobody to blame but you. And so I just moved my time and energy to the new system that I wanted to see in the world. And my time and energy became way more effective. And I got to see beautiful people building this and all sorts of opportunities. And so, yes, I realize what's coming, and I realize how chaotic this is going to be for a lot of people. And while I have empathy for that, it doesn't even touch me, like not at all. I didn't go through any of what you just described. I went through a period of, I used to think this, so I understand why everybody else would think it, and now I know. And I say oftentimes in Bitcoin why it's such a paradigm shift that I totally understand why people don't understand the paradigm, because I didn't. So, and then there's other people in Bitcoin that once they understand the paradigm, they yell at people who just aren't there yet, like they always knew it, and they didn't always know it. We've never seen something like Bitcoin in human history. There's never been something like decentralized and secure. So we don't have a framework. We don't have the mental lattice in our brain to hold on to what the new thing looks like. We try to make it, the mental lattice is from the system. So we try to make Bitcoin compare with the existing system, and it looks unlike anything humans have ever seen before.
Okay. So I like I said before, I've listened to like dozens and dozens of your podcasts, but I haven't heard anyone ask this question. How much gain can we attribute to Bitcoin if it also did not have the 185 trillion in capital injection, or is it a completely separate system that is repricing everything since it allows the productivity gains to flow from the free market?
It's two things depending what. So look at it for all of your viewers that are listening. Just instead of saying currency, say piece of paper. And wherever you are, so in Canada, it's call it 88,000 pieces of paper today. But then look at Bitcoin price in Turkey, where there's been more printing of pieces of paper, and it's 2 million pieces of paper. Or look in Argentina, where there's been more printing of pieces of paper, and it's 55 million pieces of paper. And it's just describing the piece of paper, right? If you're converting Bitcoin to the piece of paper to measure your wealth, it's describing exactly what you just said. So if governments are going to print more money, it'll just describe, it'll go up relative to those pieces of paper. And so today, what I believe it's doing is it's repricing the entire, if it stays decentralized and secure, which I think it will, it is repricing every single thing in the world because it's tethered to energy. And energy is a first principle of life. So it's tethered to energy, it's repricing everything in the world. So if you're measuring energy prices in it, the energy prices are falling too. If you're measuring anything, it's measuring the free market. But it's repricing that $900 trillion global ledger as it does. It's repricing all of the debt. It's repricing everything within the existing system over time. So, but even in the question that you just asked, you're inferring the fiat mind to think it's going up. So now let's just use, if it reprices the existing system, and where are we today in the existing system? 900 trillion of global wealth, divide that by 21 million or 20 million or 17 million, whatever you think the lost coins are, and divide 900 trillion by that number. That's Bitcoin. That's a Bitcoin value. That's implied Bitcoin value today. Let's call it 42 million per Bitcoin. Implied. If it stays decentralized and secure, that is what it will be worth based on today's terms in the future. But by the time we get there, we know the global ledger will not be 900 trillion. Right? It'll be 2 quadrillion. It'll be 5 quadrillion. It'll be 10 quadrillion. It'll be so insane amount of money printing. So if it's 2 quadrillion, or let's call it 1.8 quadrillion, then that 42 million is 82 million. But it doesn't buy anymore. Right? It's just a measuring. It's just all the prices will be higher in the new balance sheet, and Bitcoin went up along with the money printing. But what's really happening, and to your point, which is really happening, is the 42 million in a currency that can't be debased is infinitely more valuable because deflation is the free market. So every year that 42 million gets more valuable, that you could never spend it all because the free market priced in Bitcoin is prices are falling forever. So imagine everything looking like your calculator app, and you have 42 million. That's what's happening.
Okay. So how important will cybersecurity be in the future, and will Bitcoin be able to withstand attacks?
So that's what. So this is the key part of Bitcoin. So cybersecurity is going to be really important. It's really important right now. So that as the marginal cost of production falls, then threat vectors explode in any centralized service, and they're all centralized behind inefficient firewalls. And so let's use this as a real example. I'm building an AI me right now, and a Jeff AI, which can do everything I can do. And it's not quite ready to release to the world, but it's getting closer. It's staggering what it can already do, and it'll just get better in time. So if I can do that, and the technology to do that is costs almost nothing, and it gets better and better with all of my data, then I could actually use, if I was a malicious actor, I could use that to scam people. Or if I wanted to create another one, and I was a malicious actor, or an army of them to trick old ladies to give me their money, right? Or to trick a family to say that I had their child, right? Or to infiltrate systems. All of that's coming, and it's going to get way worse. And I don't mean to do this to drive people to fear. I mean to do it to drive them to action, because those threats get worse because our system is based on theft and drive you to exploit that into this system. There is no exploitation if prices of that marginal cost of production falls and it services all of us. So from the existing system, and Bitcoin is behind this energy wall, and the things that are built on top of it force what I'm talking about. In fact, the thing to solve what we're talking about is Bitcoin. It resolves that conflict. We won't be able to go through that depth in here on why, but people should read an article I wrote called "Finding Signal in the Noisy World." It's on jeffbooth.ca. It's on that website if they want to start going down why Bitcoin is such an innovation, what that means, and it just can't be stopped.
Okay, so let's switch some gears here. So my mentor, Caleb Jones from Unchained CEO, said the only two people who will survive and thrive in the coming decades will be people who are either very wealthy or are hyper flexible because of the economic and political dark age we have entered. In your George Gammon debate, you said you are going to have to retain flexibility in the world we are moving to. So is that where you are alluding to?
Yes. So every country, so you don't have to wait. Bitcoin's a permissionless, decentralized, secure system. It's open to the world, completely decentralized. So what do you think? Why do you think governments right now are trying to lock you in and take off the on-ramps? Because they can't let you out of the control system. And some governments are going to realize the free market's more powerful, and they're going, like El Salvador, and they're going to be beneficiaries. And some governments are going to try to lock you into a control system. And so every time you hear, every time you deal with fear in what your government might be doing, ask yourself, what does it say about the government, right? Because if it's trying to lock you in, that means the government's preying on you instead of serving you. So it's like a loudspeaker, like they're yelling at you to get out when most people are staying trapped. And you don't have to wait. You personally don't have to wait for 1 second. It's open, permissionless, decentralized, and secure. And the more energy you move over to this, the faster you heal the world and you heal. So it's actually shocking to me that people are, and even George for a while, and now George is becoming more of a Bitcoiner. And but I remember the first conversations about kind of, and he was so mad at the system, and so but didn't have a way out. So he was one of those ones that was making the system stronger through his actions, and now he's starting to move and starting to understand we control the future. If you believe somebody else controls the future for you, it's true for you, but it's not true for me. And so as more and more people move to this, there's just no way to stop it. Because if one government tries to stop it, there will be lots of choices for you to go to, because it'll create more opportunity for other governments and to create value. And we've always lived in a world where governments try to attract labor and capital to grow their economies. So why wouldn't that look the same? And so if like when China banned Bitcoin mining for the 18th time, it created a massive move from Bitcoin miners to the US. But there's still over 10% of the hash power is hidden in China, in all these regions that just don't care. You can't stop it. There's no way to stop it. So China, by being an authoritarian control system, because Bitcoin would kill an authoritarian control system, kind of did what North Korea did by banning the internet in North Korea. And so, but you have to expect all of this chaos is going to happen as we go forward. It's going to really happen as we go forward. So you have to retain flexibility.
Okay, so how will other countries outside the West survive the new system we are entering, or will the United States, Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand be the last one standing?
I think it's the opposite. I think it's the most times a monopoly. If you just look at typically what happens in technology, A monopoly sees what's coming last. Why? Because the monopoly is most benefited from the monopoly power. So now just take the monopoly of money. Who is the major beneficiary of monopoly of money? US. Then Canada and Europe and Japan. And so why you don't see this exploding as much, and why don't you see Bitcoin at your corner store, is because you're living in the monopoly. And that means you're stealing from the rest of the global south at a rate, because they're living in their labor has to be relative to yours way lower to be able to. So it's monetary slavery, really what it is. You have modern day slavery through a monetary system. So you can extract cobalt from Democratic Republic of Congo at $2.50 a day. You can extract that labor and materials through a monetary system, and lots of other examples as they continue to revalue their currency against yours. And you don't see that. You don't see the negative externality of that because you live in the monopoly. But there's a major negative externality of that. But what ends up happening is when technologies come and solve that that negative externality for the people most hurt, the furthest away from the monopoly, go first, and it becomes a bottom-up disruption to the monopoly. Happens throughout every single industry, throughout all of time. It's how Amazon beat Sears, right? It's how Blockbuster was destroyed by Netflix. It's how all of this always works, and it always starts from the edge, from the people furthest away from the monopoly, and then it moves up. It gets stronger and stronger as it moves up. So through that lens, it makes perfect sense why El Salvador went first. High crime, terrible economy. People that didn't realize that high crime was a result of the terrible economy instead of the other way around. And now their bonds have been upgraded twice in the last 2 years. Well, the U.S. bonds have been downgraded twice in the last 2 years, and their economy is booming, and more people are moving there for free market. And and you can see the hope, you can see the change. And that's going to spread around the world, and it's already spread. When I travel to some of these countries that were crazy oppressed, you can see it spreading from people to people around the world, and that's why it's growing so fast.
Okay, so Bitcoin allows you to be like mobile. So do you recommend having multiple residencies, passports? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm currently thinking through that right now myself. So looking at not residencies, but passports. But with Bitcoin, you don't have to wait. Like, you can store the number, you can store the words in your head, and you can get on a plane anywhere, and you have all your wealth. So if all of your wealth is tethered to a country, you can and you have no wealth that's not tethered to a country, then that could be really a dangerous spot in the next little while as this accelerates. You have to keep coming back. The existing system is completely insolvent. The only way it gains its solvency is through stealing yours.
That's why they want to keep the citizens trapped, right? So they can use them for tax purposes.
But it's not just taxes. That's the most important thing. When a system gets like this, right? So at $400 trillion of debt, that's 12 million, $1 a second paying off the debt. It's 12,873,000 years to pay back the debt. It's already insolvent. It's completely insolvent. So if you're spending your time measuring in those currency units and trying to gain more wealth relative to those currency units, you can't win. You'll lose. And most people are spending all of their time in those currency units, thinking that there's a solve from that. And the rise of the anger around the world is that, right? It's getting worse and worse, and they're feeding that beast, making it worse and worse. When they can just store their energy into a unit that can't be debased, and they can just move their time in an instant and can't be debased. So yes, governments are going to try to close those on-ramps, but they're impossible to close because it's decentralized and secure. If it wasn't, then you could close those on-ramps. You could reprice gold. You could, anything we've ever seen in the world before, you could stop. This you can't stop. And so, and the more and more people that realize it can't be stopped, they add their voices to something that can't be stopped, and we transition faster to a world of abundance. But I will say most people will stay stuck, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think most people are not going to see it coming, and it will probably be too late by then.
Well, put it this way: the transition is going to go on for a long time. There's never, it's not going to be a light switch. 1 minute we have this system, 1 minute we have the new system on Bitcoin. It's going to be, if you're living in the Bitcoin system, your life will get better and better and better, and you're going to see more and more opportunities. And if you're measuring and living in the other system, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And that's probably the best way to say it. And going back to something I said before about currencies, there's a lot of people, if you just said measured their piece of paper, right? When you look at the people in Argentina, you laugh and you go, why couldn't they see that their currency was being devalued? Why are they measuring in that piece of paper? And you're just, and then you realize, no, I'm just measuring in a different piece of paper, and I can't see it. That's why I use that example, because when people can see it in other people but can't see it in themselves, it helps them break that, because every single piece of paper around the world is losing value, or you have theft in money at that, and where you are in the world is your rate of theft. Now, once you understand that every single piece of paper, now you stop saying, how those people in Turkey, why don't they understand? And you start asking yourself, why don't I understand?
Can you go over having a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset, and how that plays into technology, since technology scales in layers? For example, people say Bitcoin's too slow, high transaction fees, but we have second layers coming around, Lightning. Can you elaborate, please?
Yeah, so that's actually why I said to read that, Finding Signal in a Noisy World. So that's a little different than growth mindset, but if you just said, we see far more companies than we see technologies, than we see protocols. What you could say is, here's the way the world looks. Like, say, technology, we see way more companies, we see then technologies, then protocols. Protocols come around very, very rarely, and they come around. And so, because we see more companies and technologies, is really confusing. If we see a protocol, it's really easy to mistake a protocol with technology. So anybody that says blockchain or crypto essentially has mistaken a protocol with a technology, because they think, I can get the next technology or the next company that's better than Bitcoin, because they made that mistake. Totally normal, because humans don't see protocols very often. The internet was a protocol, and it came along, and what happens in protocols, they come around very slowly, and the first layer of the protocol, the base layer, does something very, very narrow, because if it tries to do too much, then it fails, then everything above it fails. So all Bitcoin did is decentralize it in security, and it sacrificed scalability. So it could only do 5 to 7 transactions a second. And a whole bunch of people that thought in technology rather than protocols said, great, I'm going to create a faster Bitcoin, a better Bitcoin, a world computer, or a whole bunch of that, without understanding the trade-offs in doing so, that they had to either centralize or be insecure. And then you had a high cost database. So they did a whole bunch of other things, and all of it means 20, 40,000 coins are virtually garbage. All of them are going to zero. Because for 15 years, Bitcoin is getting more and more decentralized and secure, stronger and stronger and stronger. When people say it has no utility, go back to the entire conversation we're having here and saying, what is the utility of repricing the entire world in something that serves us? It's the greatest utility in the world. So when people say it doesn't have any utility, it's humorous to me. And then what ends up happening is, because protocols come in layers, then the second layer gets built. Today, Lightning, Liquid, a bunch of other on top of that, which provides unlimited scaling, which every 10 minutes comes down to the base layer to give decentralized and security. So you sacrifice a little in the second layer that comes back down into the first layer, and then on top, and you don't need another token, you don't need another cryptocurrency, anything. It's native to the protocol stack, and then then that happens again on the third layer, and you get more and more functionality without and all of the functionality on top of it essentially inherits the protocol design of the first layer, some trade-offs. So it allows that scalability. What we're doing right now on this Zoom or this meet is using the protocol stack that was developed through DARPA in the late 60s and to HTTP in 1989, and then all the entrepreneurs race and they build value on top of that. Google uses that, iPhone uses that, this uses that, everything uses that protocol stack, and you have a new protocol stack being emerging on top of Bitcoin, which is tethered to energy.
Okay, so what are some actions one can take to start moving towards the new system, such as educating themselves on what Bitcoin is, taking self-custody of the Bitcoin, running a Bitcoin node to make the network more decentralized?
Oh, again, I get asked this question often. Michael Saylor I saw it yesterday, did a really great speech or a great talk, and he said, at 2 hours, I thought this was a Ponzi scheme. At 10 hours, I was curious. At 100 hours, I thought this is incredible. At 1,000 hours, I couldn't believe how this changes the world. And so there's a bunch of people throwing barbs that are not even 2 hours in, that don't know. They have no clue. And they just need to, with curiosity, ask the questions and start to spend some more time in it. And you can do that through going to a meetup group, launching a meetup group, going to a conference, organizing a conference. There's tons of free material and podcasts you're creating. Create a podcast to help other people, and you'll learn through that too. So there's so much opportunity to learn, and as you learn, you'll see more opportunities. Start a business, but all it takes is starting. And if you just, this is as an entrepreneur, why it's actually interesting to me that people wait. If you saw an opportunity like this and it was hard to understand and a lot of people were confused, wouldn't that be screaming about an opportunity to solve that problem for people? It'd be screaming at you, here's where I can make a lot of money by solving a problem for people. And that exists in how to self-custodial this safely. That exists all over this emerging landscape, because entrepreneurs go to where the puck is going, right? So as you understand this more, it creates untold wealth if you can provide value for the 99% of people that are just learning the adventure now. How do they get into this safely? What does that look like for them? Why do they need to know that?
Can you go over some Bitcoin projects or companies that are being built on it? I know you're running a venture capitalist, Ego Death Capital, as well.
Yeah. So, but and again, I just reinforce that's the same for me. What I realized for myself is 2-3 years ago, I was probably a hypocrite in Bitcoin because I had all my energy in the fiat mindset, boards, technology companies, and the like. That's where my wealth was being made or protected. Yet I had a hedge against a world collapse, against a system collapse with Bitcoin. And I realized my own energy matters where I put it. And realizing I was a hypocrite, how could I expect, if I knew all this, how could I expect everyone else to move without me moving? So I just got rid of all those boards. I went off all of those boards and moved all and started the venture capital company so I could contribute my time to helping entrepreneurs build out this ecosystem. My time, my best time and energy, my money to be able to help out entrepreneurs. And what I found is that resolution within me, by the way, I can't begin to describe how much value. I'm not talking wealth here. I'm just talking about how much value in my life it's created, because when you're congruent with all of this, all of the best entrepreneurs find you too. And so you create, and now you can see where are people having problems understanding this, and what type of products can be built to be able to solve their problems in a way that builds this out faster. So if you had to try to convince every person through a podcast like this or education, one at a time, that seems like a pretty slow way. It would be like trying to convince people about the internet before they could use the internet. Make sense? And by the way, I remember those days. so I know what that looked like. But a faster way is to build really valuable things for them. The thinking about how the internet works, they don't even have to think about that anymore, because they have so much value in the products and services that are on top of that. So I would just say there's almost limitless opportunities there. There's if people are on your podcasts aren't on, they should go on Nostr. They should look at the communication on top of Bitcoin that Nostr is. They should. We're investors in Fedi. They should download Fedi, Fedi Brava from the App Store and learn about what that's going to do. But lots of others. It's incredible how fast this ecosystem is moving.
Okay, Jeff, we got one last question for you. So in your keynote speech at Bitcoin Atlantis 2024, you got a little emotional at the end, and rightfully so. Would you say Bitcoin is the greatest creation in modern history because of how many new opportunities it will create?
It's bigger than that. So yes, it's the great. I think it might be the greatest invention to date that's ever been formed. And remember, we're constantly doing that, better in service to all of us. But this is unique, and that's why I got emotional, because when you really understand what it means, we today live in an extractive system that must divide us to remain extractive. And most people are measuring that and playing prisoner's dilemma within that extractive system, that there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser. And that prisoner's dilemma means we're all losers in it. And what Bitcoin does is it unites us on an honest ledger, that we're all winners. No matter what action we take into it, we make that network stronger for all humans. So it's a network that the one divides us, one unites us. And when you truly understand how profound that is, how we are one, all of our thoughts, actions, we think we were always had all this knowledge, but our knowledge is constantly changing from all of those people in our lives that have ever touched us. And so what would it look like in a world where all 8 billion people, in service of all 8 billion people, it's at a magnitude it's hard to describe to people that haven't gone down this rabbit hole yet. But it's a very, very, very powerful.
Okay, Jeff, where can people find more information about you or reach out to connect?
So I just heard this again, so go to my website, jeffbooth.ca. And the reason I say that is it'll also list any social media that I'm on. If the social media is not linked on that website, or a company that I'm involved in is not linked on that website, it's not me. There's so many scams that say that they copy my content that I place somewhere else to be able to place it somewhere else as me. And then they try to develop a personal relationship so that it can steal your money. So I see it all the time. So please just reference anything on jeffbooth.ca. If it's not there, it's not me.
Okay, Jeff, thank you very much for your time. Want to remember this book right here. Everyone, check it out, please. Great book, very entertaining, very educational. And Jeff, thank you for your time. You're a very honorable man. I reached out to you, replied back, very quickly, and I, again, appreciate your time, sir. Hope we can connect or get an update, in the future.
Look forward to it.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay,
Bye.
thanks.